On a bright May morning in 2004, a 19-year-old college freshman stepped outside to clean a light pole at her sister's apartment complex in Corvallis, Oregon. It was a chore she'd done before. Quick, simple, harmless. But within minutes, she was gone. Her flip-flops lay on the ground. A bucket of soapy water stood beside them. The parking lot was otherwise silent. And in those few quiet minutes, something terrible had happened. For the next 5 years, Oregon would search, hope, grieve, and wait until a confession, a plea deal, and a hand-drawn map finally revealed the truth behind one of the most haunting abduction cases the state had ever seen. This is the real story of Brooke Carol Wilberger, the young woman whose disappearance shook an entire community, and the investigation that crossed state lines before delivering long-awaited closure.
Hey, you found Hidden Truths. This is where we dig into strange stories, mysteries, and the stuff people don't usually talk about. Let's see what's really hiding underneath.
Brooke was the kind of person people remembered. Sweet, athletic, grounded, and deeply connected to her faith. She had just finished her freshman year of college and come home to Oregon for the summer. She planned to return to school in the fall, but for now, she was helping her sister and brother-in-law manage their apartment complex. It was ordinary work, sweeping the walkways, cleaning around the property, doing small maintenance tasks. Brooke didn't mind. She liked helping. She liked the sunshine. She liked being close to family. And on the morning of May 24th, she started her day like any other. She put on casual clothes and flip-flops. She filled a bucket with soapy water. She grabbed a rag. Her plan was simple. Walk outside and clean the light poles in the parking lot. That was it. Nothing dangerous, nothing unusual. But what happened next would turn that ordinary task into the beginning of a massive investigation. At around 10 a.m., residents of the Oak Park apartments noticed nothing strange, just a young woman cleaning a light post in broad daylight, and then silence. When Brooke's sister came outside a short time later, she noticed something odd. The bucket was still there. The flip-flops Brooke had been wearing were lying on the ground, but Brooke was nowhere in sight. At first, there might have been that hopeful rationalization. Maybe Brooke stepped inside. Maybe she walked to another part of the building, but within minutes, her family knew something was wrong. Her flip-flops weren't the kind of thing she'd leave behind intentionally. Neighbors reported hearing a scream that morning. A brief, sharp sound that had startled them, but didn't lead them to think someone was being abducted. It wasn't enough to identify anyone. But it was enough to send a chill through investigators, because screams and abandoned shoes, in cases like this, often mean one thing. The victim didn't leave willingly. When police arrived, they didn't treat it like a typical missing person case. They acted fast. They sealed the area. They questioned neighbors. They searched the parking lot, apartment units, and nearby wooded areas. Within hours, search teams were combing Corvallis. Volunteers showed up in waves. Helicopters flew overhead. Dogs picked up a scent, but lost it quickly, suggesting Brooke had been forced into a vehicle. Everything pointed to a sudden abduction. But there was no witness who saw a struggle, no trail of belongings, no signs of forced entry, no surveillance footage. Just the silence of a place where something violent had happened before anyone realized it. Investigators soon found a clue. Not physical evidence, but a pattern. Multiple witnesses reported seeing a green van near the apartment complex that morning. Some said it looked out of place. Others said it was circling the lot. One witness thought they saw a young woman in distress inside a similar van days earlier. None of these details were enough to identify a suspect. The van was gone. The driver was unknown, and no one got a license plate. Still, the green van became one of the strongest early leads in the case, and while investigators couldn't yet link it to anyone, it would later become a key piece of the puzzle. In the first months of the investigation, detectives followed dozens of leads. They investigated a man in the area who had a disturbing history involving stolen women's underwear. He was suspicious, volatile, and known to police people. Thought he might be capable of escalation, but after extensive questioning, searches, and interviews, investigators ruled him out. Every time they thought they were getting close, the trail went cold. The community was devastated. Flyers went up everywhere. Church groups organized vigils. Residents who had never met Brooke cried at her story. But as weeks turned into months, and months into years, there were no confirmed sightings, no contact, no new physical evidence. It was every family's worst nightmare. A daughter gone, and no explanation. For Brooke's family, these were agonizing years. They never stopped searching, never stopped hoping, never missed a vigil, never let Brooke's name fade. The community stood behind them year after year. But the lack of answers was suffocating. And then, in 2005, almost a year after Brooke vanished, everything changed. In 2005, almost a year after Brooke vanished, a young woman in New Mexico managed to escape from a kidnapping attempt. The attacker drove a van. He was violent, erratic, and terrifying. But she escaped and identified him. That man was Joel Patrick Courtney. When investigators learned his name, everything changed. Courtney had ties to Oregon. He had been in Corvallis around the time Brooke disappeared. He fit descriptions given by witnesses. And he had a long criminal history involving violence against women. Most importantly, he had lived near the area where the mysterious green van had been spotted. The coincidence was too strong to ignore. Detectives began piecing together Courtney's movements. His timeline overlapped with Brooke's disappearance. He had no solid alibi. His behavior pattern matched what police suspected had happened. But the biggest challenge remained. There was still no body. And without Brooke's remains, prosecutors couldn't charge him with murder. For years, Courtney denied involvement, refused to cooperate, and avoided giving any information about Brooke. The investigation stalled. Again. For Brooke's family, these were agonizing years. They never stopped searching, never stopped hoping, never missed a vigil, never let Brooke's name fade. The community stood behind them, year after year. But the lack of answers was suffocating. And then, in 2009, everything changed. Courtney contacted authorities. He wanted to talk. Courtney made a deal. If prosecutors agreed not to seek the death penalty, he would tell them the truth. Brooke's family agreed. They wanted to know what happened. They wanted to bring their daughter home. Courtney then confessed in detail. He admitted that he approached Brooke in the parking lot. He threatened her with a knife. He forced her into his van. He drove her to a remote area in the Oregon Coast Range, a place far from the apartment complex. Hidden among winding logging roads, he assaulted her. He held her overnight, and when she fought back, fiercely, desperately, he killed her. The confession was devastating. But what he did next allowed investigators to finally find Brooke. Courtney drew a map, a rough sketch, but accurate enough to guide search teams deep into the woods. It led to an isolated logging road between the communities of Blodgett and Wren, a place with no signs, no landmarks, no reason for anyone to go there. Teams searched carefully, meticulously, and finally, they found her. 5 years after Brooke vanished, her remains were recovered. The search was over. The waiting was over. But the heartbreak was permanent. Courtney was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Brooke's family spoke at the hearing. They described her kindness, her faith, her ambitions, her smile. They expressed gratitude that she had been found, but the pain was unimaginable. Her mother said they were relieved to finally bring their daughter home, but the wound would never fully heal. Brooke's case changed Corvallis forever. Parents became more cautious. Universities updated safety programs. Communities strengthened watch groups. People became more aware of their surroundings. Brooke was no longer just a face on a flyer. Her story became a symbol of vigilance, resilience, and the need for communities to protect one another. Brooke's case is a reminder of how fragile everyday life can be. You can be doing something routine, cleaning, walking, working, and danger can appear in a moment. It's also a reminder of resilience, of family, of the power of community, of how far people will go to bring someone home. And it is a reminder that justice doesn't always come quickly. But when it does, even after years of darkness, the truth can finally be laid to rest. On that morning in 2004, Brooke stepped outside with a bucket and a rag, expecting nothing more than a simple chore. She never made it back. Her story is one Oregon will always remember, not only because of the tragedy, but because of the strength of the community that fought for her, the investigators who never gave up, and the family whose love carried them through years of unimaginable pain. Brooke's case is a reminder that evil can appear in ordinary moments, but so can courage. And though justice came late, it came, and Brooke finally came home. Brooke's name lives on in Oregon, carried by those who knew her and those who only knew her story. In every vigil, every story shared, every reminder to stay aware, her memory remains a guiding light. For her family, the years of uncertainty were a living nightmare, but knowing the truth allowed them to begin healing. They could finally lay their daughter to rest, knowing where she was, knowing what happened, knowing she had been found. And for investigators, the case stands as a reminder that even the hardest mysteries can be solved with persistence, cooperation, and time. Brooke's story continues to be told because it matters, because her life mattered, and because her loss reshaped an entire community. Even now, years later, people still speak her name, still mourn her absence, and still honor her memory. Because in cases like this, the story doesn't end with a confession. It ends in the hearts of those who remember Brooke's light didn't fade. It was carried by family, by investigators, by Oregon, until the truth at last came forward. And though she never made it back home that morning, she finally made it home in the end.